Good morning and welcome to Anthropology 4310, Theories of Culture. Today we're going to be blessed, I hope, with two student group presentations on concerning feminist anthropology. This is an area that has really transformed certain sections of anthropology anyway. I can remember, of course I remember back almost to Papa Franz, but I can remember when the discussions concerning sex and concerning in anthropology, or whatever, however you want to say it, really had to do with sex roles. Anthropologists thought they had done their job if they say males do this, females do that, and that would be the end of the discussion. And then along came these notions of gender, which transformed anthropology. Originally it was kind of a substitution of the concept of gender for sex roles, and then feminist writers began to transform that area of anthropology and make it more than just about gender. It became feminist anthropology, which of course has other parallels in other disciplines of other social sciences and also in some of the humanities. So there is a whole body of scholarship, of feminist scholarship, that is larger than anthropology. But of course what we're interested in today are those areas in which feminist anthropology, the kind of impact it makes upon anthropology specifically. So, and then to give you a notion of upcoming events. Next Tuesday we will be having two groups presenting on symbolic and interpretive anthropology. On Thursday of next week I will be absent. Someone will be in my place to introduce them, but we'll be having two groups, I think it's two, on postmodern anthropology. And then the following Tuesday, I can't remember the date for sure, but Saul Martinez will be giving us a guest lecture on postmodern anthropology, and I encourage all of you to attend or watch, as your case may be, because it should be excellent and answer all those questions you've been having that remain unanswered after the groups make their presentation. Then following that will be a lecture by Dr. Kenneth Brown on ethnography and archaeology, and following that will be a lecture by Dr. Widmer on archaeology and theory. And after that, it's the end of the semester, so that kind of gives you the timetable of events that will be upcoming. And without further ado, we'll be now going to a work time. One group will then be making their presentations on feminist anthropology, and then after they're finished, we go to another work time, and then the second group makes their presentation. So I turn it over to you now. Thank you.
Hello. Oh, there. The questions up there. Do you want to do the introduction? There you are. Okay. Go. Hello. Our group presentation today is on feminist anthropology. It will be done in a play format. We are 3 American female anthropologists waiting the arrival of our train, which will take us to the Feminist Association Convention in New York. As you can see, our backs are facing the audience. The reason for this is to portray male bias in women's views. What are you reading?
Oh, it's my new book. My publisher just sent it to me. Can you hear our voices?
There's something about the cover that's disturbing.
It causes some tension, like there's something incomplete?
Yes.
Well, it's about feminist theory and anthropology.
So you're an anthropologist?
Yes. In fact, I'm on my way to New York for a Feminist Association conference. I'm a feminist.
Well, isn't that a coincidence? So am I. My name is Helen Fisher. Let me ask you, in your own opinion, what is feminism?
Well, I like to think of feminist anthropology like waves in the ocean with high and low tides, which are constantly redefining boundaries. In the early 20th century, they looked at differences in mentality in the same society and questioned conventionalities. The first wave began with Elsie Parson, and in my estimation, she is one heck of a woman. She was a graduate from Barnard College, class of 96, 1896 that is. She was a student and colleague of Kroeber and Boas, and in the spirit of searching for truth, she engaged in healthy skepticism to answer questions, to answers for social problems. She disliked sentiments. You see those 2 people over there shaking hands? And that couple over there kissing goodbye?
Yes,
Well, you'd never find her kissing at a train station.
Really?
Some described her as eccentric. She avoided being pulled into convention. But she wasn't satisfied with those who rationalized aspects of culture by appealing to mystical forces, and she didn't buy into the notions of progress from savagery to civilization. Kroeber described her, though, as one who does see things and savvies. Although female anthropologists were willing to do their work, exclusions came in the form of men's attitudes of, why educate women? They'll never work, as well as holding meetings in men's club.
She must have felt awkward being in a men's club.
Well, men's clubs were different then. Women weren't allowed in the club. She became a native informant on her own culture. New York, educated, upper class. Boas had said, you have to leave behind all opinions and emotions based on the social environment in which one is born. He must follow alien lines of thought, participate in new emotions, and understand how they lead to action. Boas relied on native informants, folktales, and detailed accounts of ceremonies. As a native informant, Dr. Parsons focused on everyday aspects of life that often were taken for granted. She wanted to capture the differences in the mentality in the same society. She began to question conventionalities, particularly those that were obsolete. We tend to classify, and once classified, we make an inside-the-box and outside-the-box mentality. It inhibits objectivity. The main objective of feminism for Dr. Parsons was the declassification of women as women, and she focused on recognizing women as human beings. The more she is defined, the more she and he are limited. It sets up territories both in the physical world and in concepts through language. Left without classification, one responds to one's environment more completely, wholly.
Yes, I have listened to many people talk about the women's movement.
Well, the 60s and 70s were quite a time. It was a radical period in our history. We were involved in getting a man to the moon, sending young men to fight in an undeclared war. There were young people protesting in our nation's capitals, in the streets and on our campuses. Men and women were questioning what had gone on before. So it was a natural outgrowth of those times for Sally Slocum, a feminist anthropologist, to write Women the Gatherer, Male Bias in Anthropology. In anthropology, questioning the question was a major point of discussion. Sapir-Whorf's hypothesis says that language shaped worldview. So it's not only the questions the anthropologist asks, but what is not asked.
Yes, I agree.
Since American anthropologists had been up to this point of a white male European heritage, anthropologists had been influenced by that history. And since anthropology is the study of humans, Sally questioned the validity of Washburn and Lancaster's Man the Hunter, who, according to their theory, Man the Hunter invented language, tools, organization, and hunting. A feminist perspective might question how meaning was attached to sounds that we call words, rather than looking to hierarchy. In many cultures, both men and women have the knowledge of medicinal herbs, their natural habitat, collection, and use. That knowledge was passed by speech, so it was shared.
So prior study was wrong.
It was biased.
Well, to me, feminism is not just a bunch of women running around demanding all the jobs that men have. It's one united voice of women everywhere saying, listen to us and value our ideas as much as any man and give us the same respect and opportunities that we should have a chance for. We are all equal when it comes to respect. And I also understand what Margaret Mead was saying.
Well, Margaret was a very influential figure in anthropology. She illustrated how gender varies culture to culture, but Freud dominated the early part of this century so much so that even Margaret Mead, who was known in most American households, could not convince us that gender is not biological. It's culturally made.
Isn't that Lewis Henry Morgan over there?
Oh,
Dr. Morgan! He didn't hear me.
Eleanor Leacock reevaluated his work concerning egalitarian societies and cultural evolution in her ethnohistorical studies. She was especially impressed at an early age to consider the historical orientation to culture.
Oh, look! There's Julian Stewart! He didn't see me.
Julian Stewart served on Eleanor's dissertation committee, which, interestingly, her research uncovered matrolocality and postmarital patterns actually challenged Stewart's patrolocality hunting-gathering notion.
That's interesting. Isn't that Deborah James? Hello. We were just discussing our views on feminism.
Hi, ladies. How are you doing? Are y'all going to the Feminist Anthropologist Convention?
We certainly are.
What is your names?
Yes. My name's
Are y'all
Helen.
anthropologists?
Yes, my name's Helen Fisher.
Yes, I'm an anthropologist. I'm a feminist.
Okay. There's been so many changes in feminism. In the 1970s and 80s, the women's anthropologists basically focused on the roles and the status of women in their societies. And the study of gender and also of sexuality came into a very, very large focus. Anthropologists have always studied man the hunter, meaning which brought into male dominance. And basically it meant that the male, they would go out and they would kill food for their family and they would bring it back. And when they brought it back, it was so funny because the mother child came into focus of the domination where the mother took care of her children, and the man would kill his game, bring it back, but he tended to share it more with his mother, and then he would share it with his siblings. And after that, then they shared it within societies and cultures. The male dominance then came into focus that they were the ones that did the providing. They did the food, they brought the meat in, and they did all of the providing for their families. And that's where all of the dominance did come into focus. It is so funny because a picture of the primate male, if you ladies can sort of try and follow my picture, when when they would go out and they did all the killing of their animals, it was so funny because the women were the gatherers. They were the ones that basically gathered all the food. And the gathering is what really basically showed for the supply of all the food that they ate. And they would come back, and the women stayed with their children and took care of their children, and they'd come back, and then they'd all share their meals. But the most funniest part of it all was the women were the gatherers. They were the ones that provided most of the meal. The difference between men and women basically is there is cultural, it's language, psychological, and biological. And there's differences. There are also differences that go into boundaries. Cultural, I think that every culture is basically different. Those boundaries, American women tend to really feel like they want to be equal to men. In other cultures, the status of that woman may be what they want. It may be truly, genuinely what they want. They may be satisfied. American women tend to want to be considered equal to men. And language, well, there's all language barriers within society except within the cultures. And psychological, basically, men and women are very, very different. Men in society aren't really allowed to cry openly. Women are, but a male tends to not look that he's a man if he does cry openly. And as for biological, well, there's really no focus, really no meaning to bring a focus on that because there's definitely a difference there that everyone notices.
Yes, this is true. Culture does shape people and their way of life. But women's biological traits have always been the same. They are empathetic, patient, sensitive, language-oriented team players. Even in the past, the man may have been the hunter, but the females, they gathered the food. They evolved with many of the same skills that the man did. The men had to learn to cooperate and to create tools and weapons, but the females did this just the same. They weren't just reproductive machines. They were gatherers and peacemakers. They were respected by the males for these innate abilities that they had. True, they were the possession of the men, but they were still respected and valued for the things they did. At least it was that way until Western contact. As Sally Slocum stated, the unequal place of women in societies today is the result of the subjugation of these societies by Europeans. This idea demonstrates how the definition of gender changes historically and cross-culturally. Deborah, what is your idea of how women have changed the past?
Well, biological sex basically determines everything. It determines the individual's role in society. First, women saw it basically, they wanted their voice to be given to their cultures. They basically wanted to be heard. They wanted to speak how they felt and have their perspective an issue. And second, the focus of that there is a separation of the words sex and gender. Sex defines biology. Gender is culturally shaped. Third, the word gender brought cause and effect. That physical and psychological differences do exist between men and women, which we all know. 1980s, sex is a social category. It became a social category just like gender.
People do have social expectations which are based on gender.
Oh, yes, they do. There's class, race, ethnic issues, economic issues, and there's religion. Feminists acknowledge that all women do not have the same universal needs or experiences. Like I've stated before, there's so many different cultures in Africa and other places in the world that really do not want anything besides what they have as for being portrayed as the woman. I think that the American culture is focused on really emphasizing women's rights. For the man to go out and be the hunter is very sufficient in a lot of cultures. They do very well with that, and their culture, they're adapted. What we have to really understand is that as anthropologists, when we go into these cultures and we stay and visit them, we have to have the respect of their cultures and learn and develop and really just bring back what we have learned and share it with other anthropologists. And feminism recognizes that theories are influenced. They're influenced by history, they're influenced by politics, by social issues, and most of all, they're all influenced by culture. The 1980s and the 1990s, feminists have centered on production and work, reproduction and sexuality, gender and state. In the past, when in the 1980s, when there was a crash in the United States with the oil rigs, basically men weren't working, they weren't finding jobs. The female was pushed to go find a job. She went out and worked. The man had to learn to come back and be Miss Mom. They had to learn to take the role of the woman. The female basically provided the living. In the United States, I think a lot of changes there started to begin to develop. And as for reproduction and sexuality, women in the United States tend not to have as many children as they did before. So many women are working in professional fields that are doctors, nurses, and lawyers. And
yes,
they tend
but I know according to the Department of Labor, many of the 174 developed and developing countries, the service occupations, which are held by 50% of women, are fixing to flourish. And yes, I know, you know, these have been basic jobs that women have always entered into, but these jobs are fixing to grow. And it's going to, all these innate abilities that these women have to, you know, to be sympathetic and everything to other people, they're going to be able to turn these innate abilities into cold, hard cash.
Yes, they are. And that is a very good thought, especially in the ways of feminism. And as but many changes have occurred. The changes have been good. There's a lot more certainly to come. And the difference between gender and sex, the role is still coming through, is still playing.
Yes. And listen to this point. You know, when a woman marries, majority of the time she takes the husband's name. She may start a new life, but that doesn't change who she is on the inside or her heritage. Times are changing. Times have changed and they're still changing. We finally live in an age where women can go out and they can follow the careers that they want to, but what's remarkable is most of them don't. If a woman goes and she earns a degree in a certain field, but then she decides to stay at home, she shouldn't be criticized for those choices that she makes. You know, it's her choice, and whether she's, you know, out in the workforce battling on the front line, or she's bringing them, you know, holding the middle together and bringing up the children at home, it's all just equally as important.
Yes, it is.
Helen, Deborah, do you both recall Susan B. Anthony,
Yes.
a powerful thinker in her time?
Yes.
Yes.
Well, have you looked at our money?
Oh, I think I do have a coin to show that has the money, and it's such an interesting issue.
Well, which has more value? The paper money or the metal?
Well, obviously you'd have to count them, you know, to be sure, but I understand your point. The paper has more value because the other is just change.
Rather than making a dollar bill with Susan's picture on it, they gave us the other, a coin. You know what change is.
Well, one thing about it is at least it's ridged around the corners.
But it's that stuff that supports our purchases when we pay for groceries at the checkout stand. It's that throwaway stuff, the kind of useless but necessary item that weighs you down in the pocket but is needed to complete the purchase.
Yes, just as women are needed to complete the human society with the man. We are all important in helping with the production of our culture.
Well, feminist anthropologists want gender and the issues of women to be addressed with the same significance as when male anthropologists study men.
We need to focus on the future and what we can do to make sure that the feminist perspective is continually being incorporated into the discipline of anthropology. Everyone must remember that it is a study of humans and their culture, not just man and their culture.
In 1988, the Association of Feminist Anthropology proposed in their first statement. They proposed to foster the development of feminist perspectives, to advance the communication among feminist anthropologists, and other feminist scholars in related fields, and to provide information on issues related to gender differences and gender-based discrimination, and to encourage feminist research for subfields, and also to develop feminist subdivisions. Feminism anthropology has ensured that women are heard. I think the biggest part of feminism is that women want to be heard, and they want to know that what they are stressing is important. And also the main thing is stressing that women have the right to make choices, especially in our societies.
Yes, because we are a nation of doers.
We all need to remember that all cultures are different. What one culture may expect, another culture may not. But given into that everyone does have the respect of their cultures.
Oh, excuse me, ladies. There's Nancy Shepard-Hughes. I want to have a conversation with her. I'll see you in New York.
Well, it's been nice talking to all of you ladies, and I'll see you all at the Feminist Convention.
Deborah, wait. I'd like to sit next to you on the train. I believe there's much more that we can discuss on feminism.
I'd enjoy that.
Okay.
What we were wondering after we have done our presentation is, does anyone have any questions or any in-thought as for the 5 questions that were posted prior to the presentation? Sure. Do you have a question?
Oh, she wants to see him again.
Okay. One of the questions is, what is feminism? Does anyone have any in-thought on that?
There she is. Yeah.
You want me to answer?
Yeah.
Okay. It's a perspective that exists at present and somewhat in the past, that women are not given the respect and the status of men in many areas of cultures, not just the Western civilization, but in other cultures as well.
That's correct. And keeping a focus on the fact that many cultures are different and that some cultures are satisfied with the way that they are functioning. Given due to that respect we have to give them when we go into their cultures. The second one is, when did feminism in anthropology begin? It really sort of began in the 1970s, where a focus basically started being placed on feminism, and as for the gender and the sex issue, those words were so interchangeable, and that was really the big focus, was getting those 2 words changed and seeing that basically there was a very big difference, meaning sex to be biology and meaning gender to be cultural. Has anthropology been fair in translating the females' contributions in other cultures? Thank you. Could male anthropologists study females and their contributions? Has there been very many studies done by males? I think it's been done by females. Female anthropologists have done the studies. What? You have a question?
Do I need to do the mic?
Please.
Well, last night I was looking over some stuff over a topic and over feminism, and I did come across some men studying or writing on some topics of feminism.
Oh, that's
so it's
great.
not just women that I came across last night.
You came across something with men.
This evening, yes.
And I think that's very, very important, because then that is what we really want to focus on, trying to get that issue across. And having the males come in and bring feminists across to everyone. And not just show it as dominated by women, and then it shows more that it's dominated by gender.
Equally. Yes.
What could we do to ensure that feminism and anthropology is taken into consideration in future studies? I think the basic issue is to continue. Oh, I'm sorry?
Repeat it.
What could we do to ensure that feminism in anthropology is taken into consideration in future studies? Anyone have some suggestions?
Oh.
Yes.
Well, I think we need to step forward and turn forward, let people see us. We need to be visible in our demeanor as well as in our voice. Women tend to not pay attention. There's a lot of women who do not pay attention to feminism. They think that there's something wrong with it. Perhaps in the beginning, it was controversial amongst women and negative. A lot of women were negative toward it. But I think we need to be addressing the women who really don't know what feminism is as well, because when they realize there's some things to be known about their condition, and they may think they're happy with what they've got, but then they may be suppressing a lot of emotions that need to be verbalized, and we need to be able to express to them what feminism is and what our beliefs are, so that they can study themselves and see if perhaps there's something more that they want and can do with their lives.
Oh, I agree 100%. Okay, we'd like to thank everyone for listening to our presentation. Feminism is a very important issue.
Thank you for your inputs, too. Thank you.
The program you are about to see is a representation of points of view held by the members of differing theoretical schools of thought. In no way do the opinions expressed here reflect the viewpoints of the performers, the faculty, or staff at the U of H. Well, maybe some of them do, but oh well, never mind. The characters in our presentation are fictional, except Jackie, who really is an anthropology student in addition to playing one on TV, and do not represent any real people, more or less. This program is intended for mature viewers or those attempting to be mature, and may bore younger viewers to death.
Hello, I would like to welcome you to our show, Anthropologically Incorrect. I'm your host, Aisha. Today we'll be talking about feminist anthropology, and we'll be talking about the feminist critique of male-biased study in the field of anthropology. And since the 1970s, women have begun to question a lot of these male-biased studies, which focus mainly on the men and how men have portrayed women in many of these societies. Basically now what women are beginning to do is women are beginning to focus on women, and many female anthropologists have this view that that there was a failure to document gender or gender biases in studies and researches, and therefore there was a failure to document humanity and to actually study the whole soul of humanity. The time periods we will be referring to in this discussion today, in reference to women, will be the societies of hunters and gatherers, Native American women, primatology, colonialism, and the postmodern woman as she exists today, and her future in the new millennium. My first guest here is Diego Escobar. He's a primatologist from the Smithsonian.
Thank you for having me.
My next guest is Senator Joe Bob Smith. He's a Texas Republican. And my third guest is Kay Soaring Eagle. She's an attorney of from the Native American Council. Welcome. And my last guest is Jackie Ripley. She's a student of anthropology at University of Houston. I'd like to welcome you all here. Hopefully we can have a very good discussion. Women have created and molded the world. History is based on the preservation of human by the female sex. We will be discussing these notions and influences of women in history from a very anthropological standpoint today, from researches and the ethnographic studies that have been done on women and the male biases in them, because majority of the studies in the earlier era were studied by male anthropologists. Men were very dominating in that field. I would like to start off by asking, which was the most progressive era for women, do you think, coming from your background and your careers? And from your standing in the society today?
I would have to say that the most progressive era, in my opinion, would be in the 60s, leading into the 70s, where this liberation and free thought took off and exists even today.
Okay.
Yeah, we have women senators, we have women running for president now. It has to be now.
So you believe it's this time period today?
Well, I think we have to go back and look at this a little differently, too. Once women were, let's see, how can I say this? Once women were created, however that was, or they had developed into Homo sapiens, that was a time when they were active in societies, or became active in a group, which developed into the societies, and that itself was a step towards progression.
Are you referring to the earlier? Are you referring to? Are you referring to more of the hunters gatherers era? Is that what you're referring to, or during the forager nomadic societies? But during the society, if you notice, mainly it was the men who were doing the hunting. I mean, that's a very big part of, even just the diet. Survival is based on food. I mean, being able to eat. So don't you think that it was still the men who were doing it?
I agree. It was the men who were going out on the hunting parties, bringing back, the meat for the rest of the families there, in the local areas, in the indigenous areas. It wasn't the women who were going out on these hunting parties. They were at home with the children.
They were at home gathering 90% of the diet from plants and fruits.
So what you're saying is that the women did more?
The women did more. Once a female ethnographer studied what the women were doing, she found that, in fact, they were gathering most of the diet. If humans today were biologically predisposed to eat mostly meat, then I would go along with the theory that the males provided most of the diet, but that's not the case.
Well, I guess that's true in the sense that the human biological diet cannot be based solely on vegetable or meat. There has to be a combination of both, but I would still think that, hunting is a little bit more risky than going out and, just going out and just gathering fruit and taking care of the children.
Having a baby on your back or strapped to your stomach and gathering fruit and vegetables all day and then preparing the food was much harder than hunting.
So do you also think that there were some advancements, some technological advancements, because of the women and the way they were so remote to the community, to their society, that they had to create new things? Is that what you're...
Everybody knows that technology advanced because of hunting, because they had to make the tools that would enable them to provide the meat.
And it was the men making the tools, figuring out what it was that needed to be made to skin the carcasses.
That's right. You don't go out, archaeologists don't go out and find baby carriers. They find arrowheads, spears,
But
weapons.
There's actually no proof that the stone tools found were made for butchering or killing animals. They very well could have been used to grind corn or prepare plant foods.
Point well taken.
And then there are those things which are not preserved, such as baskets, and that would be used for gathering. So that's something that, if the societies depended more on gathering and less on hunting, whoops. Well,
it's not in the archaeological record because it
Yeah.
deteriorated.
Yeah.
And stone tools are there.
I don't know. It seems kind of far-fetched to me.
But I would think that because the men were used to hunting, that they still have that whole aggressiveness today, as we discussed, that men are more aggressive than women and more skillful than women. Is that
They have been ever since.
Agree.
The caveman
what would you
days.
have what would be, since you two seem to be discussing, arguing for the women, what do you think would be, do you think skills just developed in men because of the fact that they were hunting, or?
Well, there was certainly a lot of skills in preparing food that was gathered, and in taking care of nurturing the children. That required a lot of skill as well. So I don't think that necessarily that...
Would you agree, or would you like to, maybe either one of you can say, or any one of you can, that the difference between men and women is based on biological, or is it intellectual? I mean, are men and women different in their mentality, in the sense of skills, in the sense of intelligence? How would you?
I read, and I can quote from Charles Darwin when he said that men have been selected for larger bodies and brains, and it all started with the need to hunt and provide food.
But what about the study that was done on the Eskimo society, where when parents, when a husband and a wife couldn't have a son, they raised their daughter as a male. They raised her literally like a male, where she grew up and she married another woman. Exactly.
As much as she could, but I doubt very seriously that she could compete with the other males.
But she would hunt and gather and provide for her family, for her children, for her wife.
But were they as well provided for as other families who had a real man that was doing the providing?
But if that wasn't the case, then that tradition, that way of living would be extinct, or would not be still, used today.
Well, it is in civilized societies. It is extinct.
I have to say that, because there is a longer gestation period, for human females, and a longer dependency period of infants upon their mothers, that this rendered females dependent on the males who did much of the work. I don't think that, I don't see how you could disagree with that.
All this business about an increased brain size because the men had to hunt and needed the skill to hunt is not true. I just can't accept that. The women had to raise the children, keep the children healthy, gather the food, prepare the food. How could the men be doing so much out hunting? They're out stalking animals, and who knows, because no woman was ever allowed to go along with them to see what they were really doing. I just don't believe the argument.
This whole idea, I would like to move into a more of more discussion on the women during the time of colonialism, because from there it seems that there was a lot of spurt of women going in different directions and women's roles being played out in different directions in different societies. How would you're an anthropology student, I'm sure you've discussed women in colonial times. What do you think, how do you think was the role of women during, being, during the colonial era all over the world? There were many colonies being colonized. What do you think?
During this colonial era, I believe that I read a study done by Anth Stoller, and that was on colonialism by the European empires in Africa and Asia during the late 19th and early 20th century. And what she has found was that there was a lot of dominism of the colonies, dominance of the colonies, and therefore the women. So this was not a very progressive time for women, be they European women or native women. Now, of course, we're talking about the women in the colonies. Now, they had more. The European women had more ability in choice and freedoms in Europe, but we're talking about the colonies. The empire, or empires in general, supported the rules of class, and, well, they established rules of gender and class and race and maintained them. And they did that in order to keep the empire dominant in that colony.
So what you're saying is that race, class, and gender are not biologically determined. They're determined by a political group?
Somewhat. Somewhat. Women, the European women in the colonies were very oppressed. And an interesting thing is that they, in turn, oppressed the native women. So, instead of supporting, as we would think, they oppressed them.
So what you're saying is they were bestowing their unhappiness upon the native?
No, it wasn't a matter of unhappiness, I think. It was more a matter of power. The empire, once again, whichever one it was interested in keeping the colony in control for the empire's economic advantage, or for that.
Okay, but what I would like to ask you is that, for example, let's take the American colonies and the European settlement in the American colonies. When they were settling, in the beginning, there weren't too many women in the colonies. I mean, there were generally men coming in because there was nothing in America to even start a family or anything. It was just constantly, it was desert and forested lands.
Well, Anth Stoller, from her research, established that the empire was controlling sexual activities in order to maintain its control over the colony. Now, I'm talking about European and Asian rather than the American colonies, so things go differently there.
Wait, did I hear you right? Did you actually say, Jackie, that the political leaders, it was the political leaders who were actually controlling the colonists by controlling their sexual activities? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and let me give you a little example of that.
Please do.
Okay. From about 200 years ago, the Dutch East Indies Company discouraged the immigration of European women to their colonies in the East Indies. They encouraged the immigration of bachelor men. Now this, what they were doing here is
I'm sorry, I just need to ask you, these bachelor men who were coming into the colonies, who they were immigrating into the colonies, were they of a certain class? Were they of, like, were most of them
She didn't really give us that information, but from the rest of the study, I believe it was important to the home country, the empire, the controlling country, that the people that were in the colonies be able to represent the empire in such a way that dominance and control would be maintained. Probably they would have to have some special skills or training or otherwise be able to be controlled in such a way that they would represent the interests of the home country.
Let's go back to women. You were talking about the women in the colonies. Once these men were immigrated there, I mean, it's just a, it's a biological, physical, mental need, So what were these men doing for the women? I mean, how were they, what kind of access did they have? The native women? Is that what they were doing?
Yeah, they had the native women. And
so now you have children of mixed races that will be formed.
Well, concubinage was generally, encouraged. And the reason why that is because of two reasons. One reason is that the bachelor men needed to be stabilized in that they would not compete for the native women. So concubinage gave every man a woman. Then the second thing was that the control of syphilis was important, and once again, concubinage meant that people were mated and there wasn't the promiscuous behavior. So,
or as they'd like to think, there wasn't
yeah,
promiscuous behavior in,
in their idea.
That they were given a slave.
Yeah, and in addition to that, which was real important to the empire, was that these concubines provided free domestic work. And so for that reason, they could keep the men's salaries low. That was economically.
That's a fair exchange, though, because they worked and they kept the men stable, if you want to put it that way. But then look at the women also got a raised standard of living. Look what they got out of the deal, progress. They got technology. They got a higher standard of living out of it. They got civilization.
But I have to disagree with you. I mean, civilization. When you're referring to women and civilization, how are these women not civilized before? How is it that you can say that these women weren't civilized before?
Well, let's get on back onto my subject.
We could take all day to argue that point.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Let's go on back. I was taking you through a little history here.
Right. I'm sorry. Please go ahead.
In the early 20th century, these were interwar years for the European nations and the empires, and at that time, their dominance in the colonies was threatened. One of the things that was a threat was the racially mixed children that had resulted from concubinage. Now, so the policies of sexual control by the empires were reversed, and concubinage was outlawed and discouraged and banned and whatever else. And also the immigration of women, European women, was now encouraged. The European women.
So you're saying European women were now being allowed or being
encouraged.
Encouraged to come into the
right,
colonies
because
to
they
settle
didn't,
in with the.
That's right,
men.
and concubinage was
So what happened
outlawed.
to the mixed race children?
Well,
and the native women.
The European women were accused of increasing racism, and it was believed that European women were very jealous of their men, their European men, having liaisons with native women, and one of the things that was a support of this fear that these women, European women, had was that it resulted in these racially mixed children. And that was a threat to the empire to have a group of racially mixed children.
But can you say...
Sounds like a personal problem of the women to me.
But can you say that it was possibly due to the fact that the men had already established, I mean, the men came when there was nothing. So when you come into a society where there's nothing and then you establish and you build upon that, can you say that possibly the men's mentality changed from a more traditional view? And as these immigrant women were coming into the colonies, they were coming in with a very traditional view, with a very traditional idea of how things should be. And therefore, that's why they're created. Because in Europe, even at the time, slavery was still there. There was very strong, very firm race lines, racial issues, and even gender issues.
Well, I'm talking about the beginning of the 19th century. I mean, beginning of the 20th century now. In the early 1900s.
Okay.
That's another point I wanted to make was that prostitution in some cases was encouraged by the empires. The reason that was encouraged is because the men, the colonial men, remember, were receiving low salaries, and not everyone could afford to have a European family, to bring a wife from Europe and start a family and support them. That was not always affordable, so therefore prostitution took up the slack where a European woman was not available.
I would like to ask you, I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but I would like to ask you, Kay, since you're on the Council for Native Americans, then, I mean, what would you have to say to this? I mean, what about the Native American women that you have come across with, who you've done cases for?
What it sounds like to me, Jackie, is that the Native women in Africa and Asia were repressed by the colonization by Europeans, which is exactly what happened in America. The Native American women were originally in power here. Their society was matrilineal.
It was what?
It was a matrilineal society. It followed the mother's side instead of the father's side, as many other societies do. The women actually owned the land. The women were the head of the household, and a group of these head women made up the decision-making clan councils.
What about the war councils? There were no women on these councils.
No, there weren't. The warfare councils were made up of every able-bodied man. And they did have a leader, a chief, but the men fought the wars, but the women made the decisions. They divided the land. They decided who could marry or not marry. So all the everyday decisions were made by the women. The imminence of conquest made the war councils more important and took away some of that power from the women.
But why was it that even when the colonists were interacting with the American Indians, why is it that there were no women present? Women were more subjected to
supper like they were supposed to be.
To their tribal area.
It's because they felt, well, the European colonists, the men who were trying to make contact with the Native Americans, wanted to talk to the men. They didn't want to talk to the women. Therefore, the women had to speak through the men. There's one Seneca woman who's quoted as, she was talking to one of George Washington's colonels, and she told him that since you won't speak to us, we will speak to you through our men. And in other words, they may be talking, but we're telling them what to say.
Very interesting, I must say. That's
this is true, but there was a constant, they did not progress, they regressed. And it was a constant regression because not only did they lose...
so are you saying that they was the Europeans coming in, that
absolutely.
The contact of European men, I want to make that distinction.
They promoted male authority
right.
To the Native American men, and the Dawes Act of 1877 took away the power that the women had of dividing and owning the land. They, the government took over and divided the land themselves.
True.
So it was a slow progression, and then as manufactured goods came into the scene in the late 19th century, well, their handmade goods were all the women had to give them any sort of economic independence, and even that was taken away.
Okay. What would you say, coming from a primatology perspective, and, I'm sure you've done many studies where you have, where there has been some form of a focus on women, or perhaps, as we generally see, there wasn't. How would you like to, and how has primatology progressed the study of women, or, you know, women themselves? How do you feel?
Well, I must say that approximately between, I don't know, roughly 1950s and 1965, or thereabouts, that the male dominance hierarchy was assumed to represent the entire social system of primates. As a result of the feminist perspective, this area, this study of primates, has been expanded quite a bit. We have been introduced with a new way of studying social behavior of primates in general, where I must say that it used to be an androcentric field. I mean, I can't deny that.
But do you feel that it's still a very androcentric field today?
Unfortunately, I think that there are still very androcentric biases in every field, in all sciences. I will have to say that. But, you know, there is, many studies have pointed out that there are more women in the field of anthropology and have made significant contributions to this field. I don't think there's any denying that. You know, feminists, you know, have pointed out that, you know, our male biases are actually a reflection of culture-bound viewpoints in the way and idealized perceptions that men have of society in general.
In the field of primatology, I have a question for you. Is it fair to say that the female primates weren't really taken into account because it was thought they didn't have any dominance hierarchy?
At the very beginning, you know, of the primatology studies, yes, men were focusing on male primates. We weren't looking at the female primates as establishing any sort of hierarchy, dominance hierarchies.
Do you feel that there is a female hierarchy, especially in the animal kingdom, or, you know, we can move away from the human perspective here for a minute, but I was just wondering, in your studies, have you felt that? Especially since the primates that are non-human, you know, apparently we say that there's a big connection between human beings and primates. And
well, I think research has shown that there are hierarchies among female primates. Yes, you are. You can't deny that. There are to the point that, you know, so-called the alpha, the original dominant female, if you will, and we're being very liberal in calling her a dominant female, but yes, she does show characteristics of dominance. She will intimidate other female primates who bring some sort of tension or opposition toward her, and she will use intimidation as a form of hostility and maintaining her position, or even it's been proven and shown that younger relatives within her family have come to support her.
Okay, I would like to, because we are going to be running out of time, but I would like to know your perspectives on what do you think, coming from your backgrounds, what do you think is going to be the role of the woman in this new era, in the new millennium? It's the, you know, it's a 2000. How do you think women are going to? Do you think there's still going to be gender biases? And if there are, do you feel that there will be male gender biases versus female?
As long as there are biological differences, there are going to be social differences. It's as simple as that.
I would like to say, though, in light of all of the conversations that we've had today, I would like to think that the feminist perspective has brought about a significant change in the way that we apply ourselves on a daily basis in the field of science. I would like to say that you know, women are coming into power. We can see that clearly here. You know, Kay is a perfect example.
Well, I would like to see one thing in the new millennium is equal pay for equal jobs, and that's a current topic, and it's true.
I think we just have to exercise some patience, although I understand that aggressive behavior is important at times too. But in time, these things will change. I think that in Western civilization, or at least maybe in the United States, and perhaps the middle, and perhaps the upper class at least, the children, the male children in families, are being expected to learn some of the work a woman normally has been doing traditionally. And the emphasis has been, it's been reversed in the case of female children are being taught to be more independent and to expect to get a college education, to expect to get a job, and expect to have fewer children in order to be able to do this
But we
role.
will still have an existence of the stereotypical image of women through these studies and researches that they've done. And I really hope that, you know, in the future that we are doing more unbiased studies of women and men in the realms of sexuality, in the realms of jobs, in the realms of housewives. Many times in many homes today we have where the female is a sole provider. I mean, I mean that's in many homes nowadays where, you know, for a time being, if the husband doesn't have, or if the man doesn't have a job, then, you know, but I mean, I guess some of that is still going to exist, and some of that we're still going to have to keep discussing.
And
but
when we talk
anything
about
else anybody would like to say?
When we talk about we, then we're talking about Western civilization and perhaps America. But we have to remember, too, that there are other cultures that exist besides us.
Right. Absolutely, absolutely. That's very true. But I'd like to thank all my guests for coming here today. This has been a very interesting and stimulating discussion, but we are running out of time. So I would like to take this opportunity to recap our discussion for today, what we have been talking about. First were some of our tenets of feminist anthropologies, where we discussed questions concerning the androcentric assumption of men. Research began to focus on women's roles and statuses in the society around the world, and the failure of the discipline to fully explore the human experience because there was such a gender bias, and there wasn't enough studies done on women. In the Hunters and Gatherers Society, we have discussed the traditional perspective versus the feminist perspective. The traditional perspective deals more with male domination, where there's males were responsible for providing, making advancements, and were naturally selected for larger bodies and brains, and played the role as a provider. The feminist perspective, on the other hand, focused more on the women's contribution to the food-gathering society. The tools advancement a lot of times were due to childcare within the communities, and the gender roles were socially prescribed, not genetically determined. The Native American women, as we discussed today, before the European contact, held much of the household's responsibilities as well as land property. Women as main decision-making council, female interaction among the colonial societies, and the Dawes Act of 1887, which took away land power from these women. And also the effect of the 19th century manufacturing industry, which caused a lot of these women to go into concubinage or to domestic labor. In the study of primatology, we focused on feminist critique, giving attention to the androcentric biases in all sciences, and the balanced views on male and female perspectives, and the observation of social and physical female animal environments, and also the female bonding through matrilineal networks, sexual assertiveness, and the social strategies. In the colonialism era, we focused more on the empiricism and the oppression of sexual activity, concubinage, immigration of European women, prostitution, and the cheap labor of Native women. And in our conclusion, we discussed more on the future aspects of women, their voting rights, possibly even women as sexual objects, the issue of job, and the issue of being a housewife, and this whole feminism era that still exists today. The further studies, it would be nice if we could do some further studies concerning the Native American women and more gender relations studies, and these studies need to be more unbiased and focused towards studying the humanity in general. Thank you very much.